Welcome to Optimize Your Success. I am Jack Scott, the Chief Operations Officer at the Mentor Project, and I'm excited to introduce your host and a mentor at the Mentor Project, Dr. Ruth Gotian. Dr. Gotian is an expert in the field of high performers. Each week, she uses a live panel filled with high performers to discuss different topics while posing challenging questions to each of the panelists. You are able to hear from each of these panelists about their challenges. You will learn how they overcame these challenges so they could excel and reach high achievement within their life. This is a podcast you don't want to miss. We're excited you're here with us today. Welcome to Optimizing Your Success.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dr. Ruth Gotian, and welcome to another week of Optimizing Your Success with the Mentor Project. Once again, we have an incredible group of high achievers. And as I told you, I send out this invitation to a couple of groups of high achievers I know, and I am just surprised as everyone else as to who will actually join us. Now, today's topic is really fantastic because we have been stuck at home for so long that we almost don't know what it's like to not be stuck at home. And I don't know about you guys, but I have not given out a business card since March. It has been so long since I've given out a business card, which was my staple of how to actually meet and interact with people. But now we are all staring at these green dots on our computer, and we are all home, and we are all, those of us who have to go into work, actually have Zooms with the people who are right next door to us just so that we can stay safe during the pandemic. So how is it that we can meet interesting people when we are so physically distant from everyone? And this is really fantastic because, as Janice even said earlier, and we're going to get to it, a lot of us who are here every single week, we have yet to meet face to face, but now we know each other so well. And part of that is because we all went to one conference, and then as the pandemic started, somebody said, who wants to have a happy hour Zoom every Saturday night? And she sent it to the conference attendees, and whoever showed up, showed up. And we have been doing that every single Saturday night since the pandemic began. So a lot of the people whom I've never actually met in person, like Janice and Allison, I actually feel like I know them so well. And as we talk, we actually see that we had a lot of similarities, and we had a lot of coincidences, and we know a lot of the same people. But this all happened. We have yet to meet face to face. I don't know how tall they are. I have no idea. No idea. So we are really going to discuss this topic because I think just because we are physically distant does not mean that we cannot meet other interesting people. In fact, I don't know about all of you, but my LinkedIn followers have doubled during the pandemic. This is a time, this is an opportunity to meet so many people that you likely would not ordinarily meet because you go to work, you come home. You go to a conference that's usually about your work, you come home, and you're only surrounded with people who are like you and in the same industry. And this is an opportunity to meet incredible, incredible people. But in order to do that, you have to know how to introduce yourself. And I always tell people, don't introduce yourself by what you do, because that is a showstopper. Nobody wants to have that conversation because they don't really know how to have that conversation if you just tell them your title. But if you tell them the problem you solve, then people are really excited to have the conversation with you. So I want to start the example, and this is how we're going to introduce ourselves. You're going to say who you are and the problem you solve. She ended our last meeting with one of the best introductions I have ever heard. So I am hoping she will start us off today. Dr. Kelly Korek.
Hi, my name is Dr. Kelly Korek, and I am trying to solve the problems as to why the sun is trying to kill us. So I'm an astrophysicist by training, studying the sun and all of her moods and her temper tantrums, and that's what I do for a living.
And last week we found out that the sun, in fact, does throw temper tantrums, which really got all of us asking, what do you mean? How does that happen? And all of a sudden we got into this great conversation, because if Kelly just said, I'm an astrophysicist, a lot of us would have said, that's nice. And we would not have even known what to say next, because most people don't know astrophysicists, let alone a female astrophysicist. So here is a great way to introduce who you are and the problem you are trying to solve. Dr. Allison Escalante, what problem are you solving?
Oh, I'm on a mission to tackle the epidemic of anxiety, which has been going up worldwide. The US hit #1 in the world for anxiety in 2019, and then the pandemic hit. So yeah, that's what I'm after.
Well, I like being #1, but not for this. Not for this. All right. So we have a lot of ways of how we can prevent anxiety so that we lose our #1 slot. And that's what I would want to talk about to Allison if we were having this conversation. Janice, what problem are you solving?
Boy, it's hard to go after those two. I'm solving how to make the world accessible for people with hearing loss. And one of the ways I've solved is in the subways, to be able to hear inside the subway information booths, which is right, never get it right behind me. So this ear symbol indicates the presence, wrong way, of an induction loop, which allows a person with a hearing loss to hear the sound from the person in the booth to drive into their hearing aid or cochlear implant.
Which I think would be very useful, especially now in the pandemic where there's all this plexiglass separating us from people.
Yes. And right now it only works for people with hearing aids or cochlear implants, because you need a receiver to be able to, and right now earpods don't have a telecoil in them that allows you to receive. So I'm hoping, Apple, if you hear this, please add a T-coil, because this would help so many people in these AirPods.
Yes, especially like as I have now, and probably some others. I think it would be fantastic. So if anyone there from Apple is listening to us, but look at how Janice and I had a conversation about hearing loss, because if she told me that she just did hearing accessibility, I don't even know what my follow-up question would be to that. But now we could have this whole other conversation.
I know you need to go to sleep, and so I'm going to adopt this because it's a great idea. Because, it is definitely a conversation stopper.
Well, now we know how to solve that problem. Susie Katz.
Hi, I am a photographer, and I started an organization called Photo Wings, and we help people try to think outside of the box utilizing photography. So to expand their thinking about photography beyond just a still image, and how it can start conversations, how you can learn history, how you can learn more about yourself and others, and it continues. It's very exciting and interesting.
Great. And what made you do that?
I'm a photographer, and I found myself in a position to give back. And I spent a lot of time surfing the net to try to figure out what I could do that would be different from everyone else. And I ended up starting Photo Wings. There's nothing quite like us. And part of the motto was this organization that we all joined called Renaissance Weekend, where there's people from all different generations and disciplines and interests that got together, and we all learned from one another. And I thought we could do that utilizing photography.
I love it. And Susie's actually one of the people that I did meet at that meeting. Now, she's listed here as iPhone. I don't know if you can take yourself off mute. Pam, is that you?
Yep, it's me. Hello.
Hello, who are you and what problem do you solve? And I know when you get to your computer, we're actually going to see you, right?
Yes. Yeah, so I am Pam Wilhelms, and gosh, there's so many problems that I'm attempting to solve. But a big problem, a lot of my work is in for-benefit business. So I teach systems thinking, and I help leaders understand the invisible systems and structures that truly drive performance in their organizations. So how do they build their capacity to understand systemic dynamics at the intersection of strategy, leadership, and culture?
So what is the biggest problem that you find yourself solving?
Well, the big problem is the shift to a regenerative economy. How do we measure wealth beyond GDP, and how do we build the leadership capacity to move us that direction? How do we build businesses that measure a social, environmental, and economic bottom line? And then my specific skill in solving that problem is working with leaders to build a culture that can build the creativity and innovation to drive a triple bottom line.
So you're working with the leaders
to
fuel that.
Yep.
And building the culture is one of the hardest things to do.
Yep.
Destroying it's not hard, but building it's really hard.
No. So I do a lot of work with leaders in for-benefit business, and I do a lot of work with leaders in tech, and I do a lot of work with leaders in government in the big shift that's happening everywhere, from Newtonian physics to quantum physics. So a lot of my issue is the application of quantum physics to social systems.
I'm not even sure I know how to do that. Maybe you and Kelly, the two of you together.
Yes, I do have fun working with NASA.
So you two know each other?
Just by these calls. We have not met at Ren Weekend.
Kelly meet Pam. Pam meet Kelly.
Yes. We've met each other on the Saturday night calls.
There you go. So how are you guys meeting interesting people now that we are all at home? Now, I know some of you are actually at home and some of you are going to work. So Allison, you actually put on scrubs and go to work, right?
Yeah, I sure do. I think meeting new patients and comforting them when everyone's wearing masks is a fun and unique experience. I am paying more attention to my voice now, and less attention to worrying about smiling, because my mask kind of restricts the face a little. But every Wednesday night, I hang out with a bunch of neuroscientists and talk about the autonomic nervous system. And I love it because one of the ways that I try to solve the problem of anxiety is helping people understand how they work. So I look at the interface of culture and how our bodies actually work, not the way most of us really have been taught that we work a certain way, and we don't work that way at all. And then using neuroscience in simple, usable ways to work on that. So anyway, on this Wednesday night call, I love it. And I just keep meeting cool people. And then I reach out to them on LinkedIn, or we set up a phone call, or we decide to write an article together, and, hours of fun conversation.
And how did you find this group that meets on Wednesday night?
Yeah, so I was actually virtually connecting with my editor at Psychology Today, and she told me that she told me that she was doing this Wednesday night thing. I think I had brought up the polyvagal theory, and I'm like, hold on, you're hanging out with Steve Porges every night? Like, I'm every Wednesday. I'm a total fangirl. I'm exquisitely jealous right now. And she's like, wait, no, I'd be happy to add you to the group. And so it's just, it's so funny. My husband teases me that on Wednesday night I get home from work and, change out of my scrub and then hang out to talk about all the vagals. And I'm like, honey, there's only one vagal. There's only one vagal.
So it was someone who you knew who introduced you to this group.
Correct.
And that's how you met all these other people who have furthered your work.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I mean, I think you know how this is done, right? You don't just say, hey, do you want to have a phone call? You say, hey, I notice you're writing about this and I'm working on something about that. Is there any way we could collaborate? And then you strike back up a conversation and you share each other's stuff. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, you're my new work friend. Yay.
And you have writing partners, which is fantastic. That's great. Now, Janice, I know you were taking classes, right?
Yes, I was taking a class with WeBank. It's a women's certification organization that was sponsored by IBM. And that was terrific. And it was a wonderful way to meet people was from these classes.
So what inspires you to take these classes, and what types of people have you met? And did you keep those conversations going?
I found it I have to be honest, a little hard to really get to know people in the class, because you would be popped in for maybe like 5 minutes, like 20 minutes, and each person had like to do a specific task. So there wasn't enough time to chat within the class. But I've met a couple people in the class that they made an effort and I made an effort because we were in similar fields or felt we could help each other. And that reminds me, I had invited somebody to this group, and I need to when you took a break.
That's right.
I need to re-invite her back.
Absolutely.
I forgot all about that. So thank you for reminding me.
You reminded yourself.
So I met like 2 people, but I can't say from that class that I met like a ton of people the way I would in an in-person setting, because there's not the possibility to like hang out at like, at the water cooler, so to speak, or actually bump into a person. You really have to make the effort. But I've met more people through our Saturday night group and this group where I've connected with people where I'll send them an article that I think they'll be of interest to them, and then they'll do the same for me. So I found that there's only so many hours of the day, and so I'm being a little lazy. I need to make more effort. Okay.
Well, I think that's not, I think part of it is if you're a friend of a friend, you've sort of been vetted by that person already. So if Janice is my friend, anyone who she's going to introduce me to in my eyes has already been vetted by Janice, right? So it's not as if I'm meeting a stranger. So people want to help each other out, right? So I told people that I'm writing a book on elite high achievers, and these are the types of people I'm looking to interview. And people right away started connecting me with people from their network, because I truly believe that people want to help people. And I think there's a lot of ways to meet these incredible types of people. Susie, who have you met? How have you met people? And in your work, it's hard because as a photographer, I would think you're on in the field. Is that the right term?
Well, I spend most of my time these days on my nonprofit Photo Wings, and I find it really valuable to be part of various organizations that relate to my field. So I'm in a photography organization, but I spend very little time there. I like people that are like-minded and curious and interested in sharing and introducing people. So today would be a perfect example. Many years ago, I went to Renaissance Weekend again in Quebec City, and it was an odd one because I knew very few people there, and I usually know a lot of people, but I met one person, and we've been friends for over a decade, and we spend like an hour sharing ideas about organizations that people should know about, or a video or an article. And today we were on the phone for about an hour, and he sent me about 8 emails with people I should meet that he should introduce me to. And I did the same for him. And it kind of, it ripples from there. So I find it most helpful to find like-minded people. And the more you give, the more you get back. And I've been told I'm a connector, and that I was probably a matchmaker in a former life.
Doesn't it feel good though to connect people?
Feels great. Yeah.
I think it's especially when something like that works out.
Especially I agree. When you know of something that other people may not have thought of, that's particularly heartwarming, and it makes you feel like you have another child. If somebody takes that and runs with it and starts an organization, or they have a synergy, or they have a new best friend, or they even learn something that day. I find it very, very rewarding, and particularly in these times.
I agree. And especially when you expect nothing in return,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's the best part.
Yeah, well,
Kelly.
What goes around comes around.
Absolutely. So if it goes around, comes around, it might as well be good things, right?
Plus, also, if it becomes where you feel like someone is just transactional,
yes,
you know what? Nobody wants to be friends with someone who's just transactional, and I think those type of relationships are so uncomfortable. You want to be able to. I mean, we're very fortunate. We've forged this group, and just yesterday, someone was helping me with something that I had a question, and in the past, she needed something with hearing aids, and I helped her. But you don't want to keep score, and you don't want to feel like someone is keeping score, because that's just exhausting.
Right.
I agree. Kelly, how about you?
So I have been meeting people by putting out offers and going through my old kind of Rolodex and old friends and figuring out how to put people together and to host things, and reconnect even with other people to see where kind of their lives are, because we were all really, really super busy and then we weren't. So it's actually been a great way to reconnect with folks, as well as to be like, hey, we have this common time. Do you have 15 minutes to do a Zoom call? There are several folks who I've kind of lost touch with and we're able to reconnect with doing that. And also caring for the next generation. So as I see the postdocs and kind of the early career folks, they didn't have the benefits that I did when I was at that age. Since they're in the pandemic, they don't get to see or meet as many people. So I'm setting up opportunities for them to meet others in the field, kind of senior leaders. And that helps me too. That helps me meet them, because they're super interesting folks who come to kind of open calls, and as well as then reconnect with my other folks who are already in my circle.
I think that's great. And how are you guys reaching out to these distant contacts of yours, these friends from decades past? Are you reaching out to any of them?
Yeah, I will. Every now and then I think of somebody, and rather than just think about them, I send them a note and tell them I'm thinking about them, and let's have a catch-up call. And I do that, both within my nonprofit, which is a labor of love, but also to people that I think that might be alone, or that might need some company, or maybe there's something that I had thought about that might be helpful to them. Like, I have a cousin in Ohio, and I worry about her. And I thought that she could, if I send her some heaters, she could be outside more with her friends. And now I've probably told a dozen people about those heaters, because it's been a good solution. And that warms my heart and keeps me going as well.
That's fantastic. Fantastic. So in addition to reaching out to friends, how do you reach out to complete strangers? Allison said you're a fangirl of, I forgot who you said. How are you reaching out to these people?
Well, I was just, as we were all talking, thinking about how, while in-person speaking has been less active, in some ways, virtual speaking opportunities have been more possible. And so, for instance, I spoke at a conference for parents, and while we were there, the three people who spoke that night were all kind of in the chat, and we were all commenting on each other's talks. So that added a collaboration. And one of them was an author of a series of books that I've recommended for my patients for years. So it was really fun to strike up a conversation. So then these three speakers connected with each other. And then I saw that the next night, a guy who was speaking, and I was looking for a new sleep book for my patients, right? And he was going to be on the next night. So I got his name and I emailed him and I said, hey, we're both speaking at this event. I'm really interested in what you're talking about, but I won't be able to be there. So he sent me his book, and which I have to finish reading. So that's a lot of fun. And then another way that I'm just like Susie, I love connecting people, right? And it's fun because I just like it just for the fun of seeing people come together. And so I interviewed Dr. Pauline Boss a few weeks ago, who's like an icon in the world of psychology, because she's the one who discovered ambiguous lost in the 1970s and worked worked with the military on missing in action, soldiers and stuff. And so I'm interviewing her about our grief and loss during COVID. And then I realized, oh my gosh, you would totally love Sue Carter, who studies oxytocin, right? And just got them connected, But what's cool about it is I don't think it works if you do it for this reason, but when you connect people, you start to build this network and they start to think of you as someone who's connected them. So then they tend to reach out to you more and they tend to connect you to more people, which is really exciting because I like people.
Allison, I think I just wanted, because you said a lot there and I want to break it down a little bit, because a lot of the things you talked about, I actually recommend to people all the time. And Debbie Heiser, who's in the back, if you can put in the Facebook comments that article that came out yesterday in Psychology Today about 6 ways to meet people virtually. So what Allison said, for example, if you are giving a talk, you can reach out to one of the other speakers, because very often when they put people on a panel or a bunch of people are speaking at a conference, they very often don't know each other. But just sending an email, introducing yourself beforehand, just, when you see each other on this Brady Bunch Zoom with all these squares, you can then start having a conversation like you're old friends because you already had the introduction. The ice has been broken. So that's one way. Another way is, and this actually happened to Allison and myself. I told you we have yet to meet in person, but it turns out we were both speaking at the same conference a month or 2 ago. And my talk followed her talk. And Allison's talk was so good, I was almost late to logging into my talk. They had to text me and say, "Where are you?" Now, this has never happened to me before. When I know people who are giving talks, I always like to take a picture of the title slide and tweet it out, because I feel that if I can tweet it out and say, "This is a great talk by Dr. Allison Escalante. She spoke about XYZ," that puts my network behind it. So now my network knows about Allison's talk, and Allison might not have been on their radar before. Well, now they are. Well, I don't remember who it was that saw that tweet, who then invited Allison to be on his podcast, right? And it was someone who I knew already. So it really helps when you do that, if you can put your social capital behind somebody. So I think that's a great way. So we talked about reaching out to other speakers. We talked about amplifying their work. If you are not a speaker, if you are a participant in one of these 1,000 Zoom calls that we're on all the time, or these webinars, or the Facebook Live or LinkedIn Live, a lot of people write things in the comments. And if someone said something, either a presenter or somebody wrote something in the chat that really resonated with you, I really recommend that you reach out to them and say, "Allison, I really loved your comment about XYZ. It really resonated with me because," and now you just started a whole conversation with that person. And that's one of the ways that you can meet people virtually. Did I get all that? You said a lot.
Yeah, I think you've got it, right? Yeah.
Did I miss anything out? Did I leave anything out? No?
You're a very thorough person, Ruth. I think you got it.
Does anyone else have ideas how we can meet people virtually as we are sitting at home in our Zoom backgrounds? Who's got some great ideas?
I would also ask people, who should I meet right now? Who should I be meeting, or who could I possibly in your network? So I've been asking some mentors that question, like, who should I be reaching out to? Is there someone that I could reach out to for, a 5-10 minute Zoom call kind of introduction? So that's one way to do it, is to kind of see if there are friends of friends that you should be catching up with.
That's a great idea. Have you been doing that recently?
Yes,
yeah. Working out?
Yeah, it's been working out. There's been some very interesting recommendations, and then some people who are like, "Oh, I know them actually another way." So interesting.
It's funny how our whole world seems to be a Venn diagram, especially lately, right? Pam, welcome. Now we see you. And you've got that perfect Zoom background. Tell us, have you met people virtually during this pandemic, and how have you met them?
Oh gosh, it's funny because I have not spent time getting lighting in my office for nighttime Zoom. Because all of my work Zoom is in light, and I'm in this front of this big window in my office. So I've got to figure out, because if I put on the overhead, I don't like it. It's just like too much light. So
you're good.
I got to work on the lighting in my Zoom room, my Zoom office. I've loved hearing what you all have to say, Allison. I look forward to talking with you. A lot of my work is neurophysiology and collective neurophysiology for leaders to understand their own neurophysiology and therefore how they impact the system, and the cultural neurophysiology.
So I'm super excited about that. I just gave a talk to the world's largest architecture firm's leadership on something similar to that.
Really? Oh, I'll look forward to talking, because I come out of engineering and architecture is where I started all of my consulting.
Pam, meet Allison. Allison, meet Pam.
Yes, I look forward to talking further about your work that you've been doing. I loved listening to you all, because we obviously don't have a problem meeting people. We're Ren Weekend people, so we tend to be in circles. I love people who are Ren Weekend people. I always describe them as people who just love to learn and they don't have to be front and center themselves. They just love to be going from panel to panel and listening to all these other really smart people. So I think for me, I have this privilege of my work is working with change agents. And I find change agents fascinating. So I get to meet all these really interesting people. The Soul of the Next Economy work has been bringing together people who are leading change in all parts of the system, in business, government, social sector. We often hold dialogues in a local living economy. So we'll have people from business and government, but they're all the alchemists who are all already get that the systems need to change. They're either leading in racial justice, or they're leading in environmental justice, but they also know there's a whole part of the system they don't have time to deal with because they're overwhelmed with their part of the system. So when you bring that system together, there's this energy that people get of, oh, good, I get to meet all these other systems thinkers who understand what I'm trying to change and are working in the parts of the system that I don't have time to work in. So hosting those dialogues is the places I get to meet really fascinating people.
So is that you're doing that virtually?
I'm doing that virtually. We're not doing the local living economy dialogues right now, but we're doing virtual soul dialogues.
So you're organizing these gatherings.
Yes.
So that's another way to meet interesting people virtually, is to actually host virtual events. And you don't actually have to host a whole big conference. I'm hosting a Zoom that's on Facebook Live, right? You don't have to do a conference for 1,000 people. There are other ways that you can do that and meet really, really interesting people. So hosting an event is another great way, because you as a host will get to meet everyone. And then the people who join you get to meet each other. And usually people come from really different backgrounds, but there's always something that ties everyone together. And the faster you can get to that point of what you have in common, the easier it'll be, right? So always look for that common thread that you have with the person, and that will really help initiate a dialogue. So Dwayne, welcome.
How you doing?
We were just all girl power. We were waiting for you.
I was about to say, should I leave? Hey,
oh, look,
okay.
You and Bruce. Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Look, you and Bruce are always welcome to the girls' club.
Yeah.
We were not talking about hair and makeup. We were talking about anxiety and the son's temper tantrums and building sustainable societies and all of that stuff. Oh, Bruce, look at that background. So Dwayne, and then I'm going to ask Bruce, the way we started it earlier, Susie's trying not to crack up. We started the conversation with the way we ended it last week, which was the way you introduce yourself. By the way, the topic today, if you missed it, is how to meet interesting people in a virtual setting or when you're on your couch. So first, it's how are you introducing yourself? And we tell people, don't tell them what you do, tell them what problem you solve. So Dwayne, we'll start with you.
I don't solve problems, actually.
You create them.
I disappoint lawyers for a living. That's what I do.
What do you mean you disappoint lawyers for a living?
So I work for a judge, and actually I just got off a call with a bunch of judges, which is why I took so long to get here. And my job is to help the judge make decisions. So one or both of the lawyers usually ends up not being happy with whatever I decide to do or whatever she decides to do through me.
So you're a conduit.
Yes. And so I write judicial decisions. Well, I draft judicial decisions and she signs off on them. And my former judge did the same thing. And so my job is to help advise her on, it's basically like assistant to the judge and then also assistant judge. So I advise her on the law, I advise her on what decisions to make. She makes the ultimate decision, and I do a lot of writing. But yeah, the most fun that I have is telling the attorneys, no, you can't do this, and that's what I always tell people. And then if they want more information, then I'll tell them, okay, here's the other 15 things that I do at work.
And to be clear, you are a lawyer. You're not just somebody who's telling people what to do.
Yes, I'm actually a lawyer. I'm licensed in New York and New Jersey.
Great. And fun fact about Dwayne is that he also has a master's degree in positive psychology, which is a fascinating field that sometimes he leaks it into our conversation. So if we're lucky, we'll get to hear that as well. Bruce, who got bopped on the head.
Hello.
Hey, how are you feeling?
My friends left me here behind me. So they had better things to do.
First of all, how are you feeling? We had a tornado in the New York, New Jersey area last night. So, Bruce, how are you feeling?
What happened? How did you miss this?
Yeah, so I was walking in the evening. It was fairly gusty outside. I was walking along the street. There's sort of woods to this side, and just minding my own business. And suddenly, like thud, something hit my head. So I thought someone had like come and like bought me on the head or something of that sort. So I quickly turned around, and there was this big branch that was sort of the size of, kind of larger than a baseball bat in terms of the caliber, and about this long. It was just sitting on the ground. So I think it basically fell from the sky and hit me in the head. So I didn't quite expect that. You know, you usually don't expect things to fall from the sky.
So you're okay now?
Stars or meteors, right, Kelly? Yeah, neither of those fell. So do okay. I was woozy for a little while, but.
Oh. Well, we're glad you're doing better. So when you're not trying to get away from flying tree branches, what problem is it that you are solving?
Right now, currently? Well, we're involved in doing a lot of.
Well, Bruce, let me just tell you, it's how you would introduce yourself. You introduce yourself by the problem that you solve.
I am the person who got bopped in the head with a branch. That's how it
That's not a problem you're solving.
Yes. But we do a lot of work where we do computer simulation modeling, where we simulate different health and public health issues and simulate different policies and interventions to help inform decision makers. So this ranges from the control of non-communicable diseases to the control of communicable diseases. And right now, a lot of our work is focused on the current pandemic. So we're simulating different parts of the pandemic at different times and seeing what might happen if you have vaccines or you enforce social distancing, mask use, and those things. And so we've been doing that work for the past 15 years or so. So things have been fairly busy. In fact, today was fairly busy because there was a lot of calls concerning the recent announcements with both the Pfizer and today the Moderna vaccine. So people were very interested in asking about, what impact that might have in terms of the pandemic. So fielded a lot of questions about that.
So you do a lot of the modeling and forecasting?
Yeah, modeling. And so forecasting, but I prefer to say sort of simulating scenarios, because the word forecasting has sort of a bad tag to it, especially when you talk about things like trying to make predictions, or, we've seen with things like election polls and those things like that, you can't really predict the future very well. So what we do instead is we run different scenarios. So we can say, okay, if this thing happens and this happens, this is the best thing to do. If this happens, this is the best thing to do. And then we give odds of things happening, but we don't want to fall on the side of making predictions, because most of the time you really can't predict the future. There's so many variables. So we do forecasting, but we do more scenario planning and simulating different possibilities.
I like that, because for those of us who study business, scenario planning is our bread and butter. That's what we do all the time. So I'm pleased to hear that it happens in science as well. And you guys should know that Dwayne writes for Psychology Today, as does Allison, and Bruce writes for Forbes, as does Allison. So we have that Venn diagram where we have all that crossover as well. So, which is great. So Dwayne and Bruce, you didn't tell us, how are you meeting people now that you're home?
Tinder, Hinge,
professionally,
Bumble.
Dwayne, professionally.
Oh, my bad. I'll let Bruce take this one. I'll come back.
Maybe it would make work more interesting if we started using Tinder.
Do you want to work with this person? Swipe right.
Can you imagine if we had that with profiles? Hi.
Didn't you think about it? Just swipe right for this person.
We
don't put our personality
research?
profile.
Nah, I don't like that research.
Bruce.
I primarily meet people by responding to Dwayne's posts on social media. That's how I mainly meet people. He'll post something about food and I'll make a comment about it, hoping someone will read my comment. That's my main.
That's your goal in life.
Exactly. That's my main goal in life. But I have meetings all day. So there's, of course, predominantly Zoom meetings. So these are meetings that would have been in person, or at least some of them would have been in person had if we didn't have this situation. So it's a different dynamic, of course, with the Zoom meetings, and I think people focus on the negatives, but there are actually a lot of positives in terms of these meetings, because you really start focusing on what people are saying. And you listen and it's almost like when you go to different settings, especially when you travel abroad, there's all kinds of stuff going on. So part of the interactions is with the settings, and that can actually kind of cloud interactions, and it can distract from interactions. Or sometimes you feel like, I can talk to these folks, but I really want to watch the view or something of that sort. Whereas with Zoom meetings, it's really about exchanging information. And it's really about finding ways to not just exchange information, but also exchange personalities. That came out wrong because that sounds like you're switching personalities with people, but meaning that you're sort of communicating your personality to other people and they're communicating their personality to you. So it's almost like we're all sitting in sort of a neutral room, so that really the focus is on the people. So I found that in many cases, you get involved in very cool conversations. You learn about people, and in fact, I've learned about people that I knew before this whole Zoom situation, but I didn't really know them as well because everyone was sort of forced to sit there and like talk about, what they're doing or what they're feeling and things like that. So I think there is a silver lining to all of this. And, maybe there's some carryover because after we get past sort of this Zoom period in our life, maybe, we can carry some of those things and say, hey, let's focus on a conversation. Let me learn about you. We're going to learn about each other and things like that. So, so that's the main way.
Well, that's where we learn some cool things about you, right?
Yeah, some cool things, maybe some not cool things, different things like that.
Didn't we learn that you're an artist or something?
I used to do a lot of more like kind of drawing, cartooning. Way back when I did photography, but like my photography doesn't hold a candle to Susie's photography, of course. So when I'm in constant awe of Susie's photography, but it reminds me of like the much lower level that I used to operate at. Although I did breathe in a lot of fixer when I was developing films, so that was interesting. I used to do photography and a lot of kind of artistic stuff.
Yeah, one of the things about Zoom that I'm finding interesting from a visual point of view is since you're close up to people, it's very different from when you're on the other side of the room or you're watching a presentation and you're way back in the audience. It's a much more intimate kind of experience. And the other thing is that when you see how they choose to have a virtual background or you're paying more attention to how they dress, you can also learn more about them intuitively as well. And sometimes it's a conversation starter.
I agree. So I think those, what I call starter sentences are so important that when you are meeting someone, and I actually tell people to log on to a Zoom meeting 5 minutes early, because usually if it's a presentation, the speaker is usually logged on early, as are the organizers. And it takes them a few minutes to do their tech and their sound check and all of that. And then they're sort of just, filling time until people log on. And especially if you're one of those quieter people that has a harder time interjecting, it's a fantastic opportunity. If you can log on 5-10 minutes early, you will be able to have really significant conversations with the speaker, with the organizers, because the other people aren't logged on yet. So that's a great opportunity to actually meet people, but you have to have your camera on for that. That is key. If you are just the black screen, it's as if you don't exist. So it's important to have that, your camera on, because if we can't see you, it's tough.
Yeah, I've always done that at conferences as well, because you can never get to the person at the end. But at the beginning, once they've gotten their sound check and they're just standing there waiting for something to happen, it's a good time to
I agree.
Have a conversation, a short conversation. You have to make sure that they're ready for it and they're okay. Do a little, looking at them first and making sure it's a good time. But that's a good way to swap cards first.
That's right. And virtually, you can do it even, you log on early. And also, as Allison recommended, if you see a speaker who's giving a talk about something you're really interested in, just shoot them an email a day or two earlier. I'm really looking forward to your presentation about X. My name is this. I work in this area at this institution, and I'm really interested in it because of, et cetera. I also tell people, so high achievers all consume information constantly, right? We're either reading or we're listening to podcasts or we have our Kindle or we're talking to people, but we're constantly absorbing new information. But a lot of them are also writing all the time, right? I told you Allison writes for Psychology Today and Forbes, Bruce writes for Forbes, Dwayne writes for Psychology Today, Janice writes for Thrive Global. I write for Forbes and Psychology Today. And I always tell people, if you read something in somebody's article, connect with the author on LinkedIn and let them know what about the article that you enjoyed. trust me, as authors, we don't get that very often when people tell us what they really liked and what really resonated. So it'll really stand out. And most of them actually post their articles on their social media. So if you can engage with that content, they will definitely notice that for sure. Anyone else have other tips that they use?
I received something from someone today about that. Exactly what happened. Someone reached out to me after having an article. And I was really like, it is really nice because you don't get, I don't. Bruce probably gets a lot, but I don't get like a ton of reaction like that for someone to reach out to me. So for me, it was really very nice.
Do you get a lot, Bruce?
Yes, I do get
Of course you do.
a number of interesting. So you get comments from people thank you for articles, or people will add things or suggest things, and then there are also people who will have of course there's some not so nice comments, but you get all kinds of comments.
I'm actually looking for an email I got, but I thought I took a screenshot, but I can't find it right now. But somebody actually sent me an email it was actually on LinkedIn about one of the articles saying how much it made such a difference for her and why. Mm-hmm. And it sort of stopped me in my tracks because I wrote it, we write in a vacuum. We write because it means something to us. And then all of a sudden it meant something to somebody else. And I was stunned and I was having kind of a rough day. So it really hit right at the right time. And I saved it. I have to look through it. I think it might even be in my favorites, but it definitely makes a difference. So I definitely encourage you, if you see articles that you like, interact, engage with the authors, with that article, let them know what it is you like, because maybe they'll write more of that.
Doing that also builds and tightens a network. Like, I'm thinking about the fact that Janice regularly says encouraging things in response to my stuff on LinkedIn. Bruce has retweeted me. Ruth, you're always calling me out online. And it just builds a sense of like warmth and community as well, which then makes you guys more likely to be my go-to people for things like, oh, this came up. I'm thinking of Bruce because he just, we just connected over that.
Absolutely.
I also find, and this is kind of funny, it's not why I do it, but it has just organically has happened. I find when I write a suggestion to someone, let's say an article, if they miss something, but not in a negative way, but in a positive way, I've had articles written about me and my work, or they'll augment it and then quote. And I have had that happen from the New York Times to Consumer Reports, where even People magazine did it because I might add something that they weren't aware. I mean, in my field, most of the people who are writing about, frankly, don't really, they're given an assignment and they don't really know anything about hearing loss. So they're writing and they're not really sure, and depending on how much time they spend on it. So if they leave something, omit something, or I mentioned perhaps another article on this, I have had so many different articles that ends up quoting me. So sometimes it's really great to reach out to someone, but it's how it's done. I mean, without being like what Bruce gets with the nasty people, you can't, that doesn't win any favors.
Oh, Bruce isn't the only one who gets the nasty people, but what the thing is, we're all trying to do good work. So when someone sends a correction or that's helpful and positive, it's great. I wrote an article for Forbes about COVID and about how speaking spreads droplets. And one of the phrases,
you said it was speaking English, right? It was about speaking English.
So, I mean, that caused death threats because I was reporting on an article, on a research paper that said that certain languages, such as English or German, are spittier than others. So I got a lot of death threats over that one. But I got also a very positive and helpful statement. Someone emailed my editor to tell her that I had used the word myriad wrong. That apparently it's not a myriad of droplets, it's myriad droplets. And I was delighted because I realized that I had been using the word myriad incorrectly. And I'm so happy now to know how to do it properly.
On that happy note, and I'm going to have to think about what we're going to discuss next week. Is there a topic you guys want to talk about? Because we're almost out of time today. If not, I'm going to think about something exciting. We'll get there. Okay. So where can people find more about you? How can they contact you? Janice?
Hearingaccess.com and my name, JaniceFlintz.com.
Thank you. Susie?
At PhotoWings, PHOTOWINGS.org. And if you want to see a little bit of my own photography, it's Susan Katz Photography, but PhotoWings is best.
And her photography is gorgeous. If you love her photography, let her know. There's one picture with a sunrise. Let her know what you think of that one. You'll see it. Kelly?
You can find me at kellycork.com or on Twitter at kellycork.
Thank you. Allison?
You can find me at shouldsstorm.com. That's a storm of shoulds, or shouldsstorm.com, or just AllisonEscalante.com.
Thank you. Dwayne?
Equalresults.com.
Thank you. Bruce?
You can find me commenting on Dwayne's social media posts. You can Google Bruce Y. Lee. If you want to see my stuff on Forbes, Bruce Y. Lee Forbes, or BruceYLee.com. And it's also Bruce_Y_Lee on Twitter.
Great. Thank you. And I am Ruth Gotian. It's just my name on all the social media, on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Ruth Gotian. My website is ruthgotian.com. I want to thank Debbie Heiser, who is behind the scenes doing incredible work. She's the CEO of the Mentor Project, and thank you to the Mentor Project for hosting us each and every week. We will see you guys next week with a great topic. I just have to come up with it first. We'll let you know. See you guys next week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you to all of our listeners and sponsors who've made this podcast possible. You can find out more about Dr. Ruth Gotian to optimize your success, live events held every Monday at 8 p.m. EST, by going to our Facebook page at The Mentor Project. I am Jack Scott, the Chief Operations Officer here at The Mentor Project and the host of Meet Your Mentor, which posts every Wednesday. If you're interested in working with The Mentor Project, please reach out to us by going through our website at mentorproject.org. We look forward to seeing you back here next week to learn more about how you can optimize your success.